America went to sleep neutral and woke up at war. But why? In 1917, the United States stood as a lone giant, watching a European conflict that had already consumed millions of lives. For 3 bloody years, America had stayed out. The national mood, reflected in music and politics, was firmly against joining the fight. President Woodrow Wilson had even campaigned on a promise of peace. So what chain of events shattered this determined neutrality, compelling the nation to send its sons across the Atlantic? The roots of American sentiment were complex. While the official stance was impartiality, public sympathy wasn't evenly split. Cultural and economic ties to Britain and France pulled many Americans toward the Allied cause. Newspapers, often fed by British sources, painted a picture of a militaristic Germany threatening democracy. Yet, within America's vast immigrant communities, loyalties were divided. Many German Americans hoped their homeland would prevail, while Irish Americans harbored deep resentment toward Britain. The nation was a tapestry of conflicting hopes, all united by one desire: to avoid the slaughter. But the war refused to stay overseas. The ocean became a battlefield, and American citizens became casualties. German submarines, or U-boats, began targeting vessels they suspected of aiding the Allies. In 1915, the passenger liner Lusitania was torpedoed, killing over 1,000, including 128 Americans. The public outcry was furious. Was America's neutrality making it a target? Further attacks on ships like the Arabic and the Sussex turned the Atlantic into a deadly gauntlet. Each sinking strained diplomatic relations to the breaking point, with Washington issuing stern warnings to Berlin. Behind the scenes, a shadow war was already raging on American soil. German and Austrian agents, desperate to stem the flow of American munitions to the Allies, embarked on a campaign of sabotage. They bombed factories and blew up a massive munitions depot at Black Tom in New Jersey. These covert acts of war made it clear the conflict's long arm could reach across the ocean. Congress and President Wilson responded with a preparedness campaign, beginning a historic military buildup. America was arming itself, just in case. Then, in early 1917, Germany made a fateful and desperate calculation. Stalemated on the Western Front and strangled by a British blockade, its military leaders gambled everything. They declared a return to unrestricted submarine warfare. This policy meant that any ship neutral or civilian entering a vast war zone around Britain would be sunk without warning. German admirals believed they could starve Britain into surrender within 5 months. A victory so swift that American entry wouldn't matter. They dismissed the United States as too slow and too weak to affect the outcome. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Just as America was reeling from this naval declaration, a second, even more shocking revelation hit the headlines. British intelligence intercepted a secret German telegram and gave it to the U.S. government. It was from German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann, addressed to Mexico. The message proposed a staggering alliance. If the U.S. entered the war, Germany would fund a Mexican invasion to reclaim the lost territories of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. When this Zimmermann telegram was made public, a wave of outrage and fear swept the nation. This wasn't a distant European quarrel anymore. It was a direct threat to American sovereignty. How could they ignore a plot to invade their own border? The final pieces fell into place with brutal speed. In March 1917, German U-boats, following their new unrestricted orders, torpedoed several American merchant ships, drowning U.S. citizens. These were the overt acts President Wilson had warned about. Meanwhile, the Russian Revolution overthrew the Tsar, allowing Wilson to frame the coming fight as a crusade for democracy against autocracy. The stage was set. On April 2, 1917, President Wilson stood before Congress. He argued that the world must be made safe for democracy. He framed America's entry not as a quest for conquest, but as a moral necessity to defend human rights and a stable world order. 4 days later, Congress declared war on Germany. The United States had transformed from a reluctant spectator into an associated power, a title Wilson chose to signify they were not bound by old imperial alliances. The impact was not immediate on the battlefield, but it was decisive for the war's spirit and eventual outcome. America's vast resources and fresh troops would help break the deadlock. This journey from isolation to intervention was driven by a combination of calculated German aggression, a direct threat to the homeland, and a rising sense of moral purpose. The story of America's entry into World War I is a masterclass in how neutrality can unravel. It shows how a nation's principles collide with the hard realities of global power. If you found this dive into the pivotal choices of 1917 compelling, help winds of thought, explore more turning points in history, please give this video a like to support the channel. What other moments where a single decision changed everything should we cover? Let us know in the comments.